Let's play a quick game. Say that in your family there's a history of an incurable fatal disease which has affected numerous individuals and carries a 50% chance of being transmitted from parent to child. Your mother had this disease in past, same with your brother, but your sister is fine. There's a medical test that can be done to give you a diagnosis, but would you want to find out, knowing that if you have this disease that it's usually fatal and nothing can be done about it? Or would you rather go on with life in ignorant bliss? What would you do?
I don't want to know.
No, you're afraid to know.
I might die. So could you. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. The only difference is you don't have to know about it today, so why should I?
This is the dilemma that Dr. Remy Hadley, or 13, is burdened with on the show House. She's the kind of person who regularly keeps up with House's goofy antics, shares his moments of cynicism, and is just an intriguing individual overall.
This might be the best thing I've ever eaten. And yes, I'm including what you're thinking of now.
All of these make for a compelling character, but the further you progress into the later seasons, the more you realize that a lot of her decisions and motivations were not solely driven because of her personality, but as a result of harboring the possibility that she may die from a fatal illness. Turns out she has Huntington's disease. Huntington's is an incurable neurodegenerative disease that's typically inherited genetically from your mother or father. It's what we call an autosomal dominant disorder, which is a pattern of inheritance characteristics, in this case a disease, from a specific gene on an autosomal or non-sex chromosome. This means that just one affected or dominant copy of Huntington's in an individual is enough to pass it on to the next generation at a 50% rate, meaning that if you have Huntington's, you have a coin flip's level of probability of passing the same debilitating disease onto your children. On the short arm of chromosome 4, you can find something called the HTT gene, which provides genetic instructions for producing a protein known as Huntington. This protein's purpose has a significant physiological connection to neural function and is also crucial for pre-birth development. So as you might imagine, any mutations to it could cause impairment or loss of proper function. Now, HTT contains something called a trinucleotide repeat, which in this case is the same repeating sequence of 3 nucleotides, cytosine, adenine, and guanine, over and over. CAG codes for the amino acid glutamine, which in a normal quantity of repeats on this gene is anywhere from 10 to 35 times. But a repeat sequence of 36 times or more means that excess glutamine is being produced, which results in the production of a mutated protein version called mHTT, or mutant Huntington.
Oh no!
This means that the more CAG sequences beyond 36 that you have, the more likely that you'll develop symptoms for Huntington's disease earlier in your life, and the faster the onset will be. More CAG repeats, more glutamine, more coin flips to get Huntington's disease. This obviously sucks, but let's take a look at why this happens by looking at genetic anticipation. These additional glutamine sequences that we're talking about will also cause loops in DNA, so when a polymerase enzyme goes to replicate it, there's a good chance that it adds even more of these unwanted repeats as it replicates the original DNA strand. This means that a normal father who has 30 to 35 CAG repeating units may pass down a 40 repeating gene to his child, which would result in the disease. This can go on for generations, so that the size of the polyglutamine sequence grows from one individual to the next. The onset of the disease may occur earlier and earlier. Having Huntington's is characterized by the loss of something called GABAergic neurons in the basal ganglia of your brain, specifically atrophy or the wasting away of the dorsal striatum portion. If enough of these neurons in the dorsal striatum portion of your brain die, it can actually start to cause, among other things, movement inhibition issues like chorea, which are involuntary dance-like movements, and athetosis, which are slower and also involuntary movements in the extremities of your body, like your hands. The problem with chorea and athetosis is that you can't really control it or suppress it, unless you're sleeping, so during all of those hours that you're awake, you're subject to tremors and shakes that are out of your control.
And contamination.
There's actually quite a great sequence of events in 13's character arc, which starts with her finishing a prison sentence and meeting up with House. Turns out that 13's brother also tested positive for Huntington's, and it was revealed in the show that the two siblings had agreed to his euthanization during the latter stages of his disease, which is why there was a brief but noticeable absence in her character and an appearance in jail during season 7.
I put in the needle, and he just got quiet. And it was over.
She eventually returns to her old diagnostic team for a brief period of time, until House sees her in a happy relationship and fires her in a somewhat odd but compassionate manner. So, despite her family history and noticeable clues of physical deterioration, 13 eventually lives with her terminal diagnosis in the best manner possible, by living life to the fullest.